Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Sam Tom here. Today we are talking about the original Saw, not the short film, so I guess not the original Saw, but the original Saw film from 2004. Before we get started, I gotta apologize for my voice. I'm not sick, but I had 2 gigs within 24 hours of each other, so my voice is kind of shot. If you have seen my music channel, you know that sometimes I can get kind of energetic. If you haven't seen my music channel, check it out. I do song covers, I do product reviews, I do weird instrument comparisons, combinations, weird educational tangents. That'll be a link in the description. Check it out if you want. But my voice is just kind of shot. I had one that was 7 to 10 at night, and then the next day 3 to 6 in the afternoon. So a lot of very loud, energetic singing. So we're gonna try to make our way through these notes. Now I will say before I get started, this is my favorite horror franchise, and like I don't even really personally consider it a horror franchise because to me there's nothing scary about it. Right? I mean, obviously, if I were in the situation, I would be scared. But like, it to me, it's a psychological movie, right? It's a psychological franchise. It's all about the way that humans think and act and interact with each other. That's what I find fascinating about it. Now, a lot of people write these movies off as nothing but gore, and I can see why some people would think that, but I do not think that that is the whole story. And if you have never seen any of these movies, and your opinion is that other people have told you, oh, it's just a bunch of gore, it's nasty, blah, 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 and so that's why you haven't watched it, I would say give the first one a shot. The first one is much less gory than the others because it was the first one. It had a very, very low budget. But you get much more of a sense of that theology and philosophy that does carry through the entire franchise. It's not always as strong as I wish it was. Sometimes the movies do focus more on the gore. Sometimes they, like, we've got the main trap in this movie that's very well known. But the movie's not really about that. There are other movies in the franchise that are basically just about the trap, and the traps are very long and convoluted, and it's a series of traps all linked together, and like, I still find those very enjoyable for those reasons, but I can understand how some people wouldn't. But I'm just trying to be clear that that's not what this first movie is. And this first movie is perfectly standalone on its own. There are a couple weird plot holes that I'll get into that have been answered by later movies, and that's another reason why I love this franchise so much, is because with every installment, you learn more about the events during and prior to the previous installments. There's a very complicated lore. I used to be very, very well versed in it. I used to be probably the most knowledgeable about these movies of anybody that I knew personally. That might still be true, but I have a couple other friends that I know are very into this that probably could give me a run for my money. That is absolutely not to say that I know more than anyone, right? Because there's always going to be someone that knows more than I do. But like, I've spent hours perusing the Saw wikis. I've made presentations on Prezi back when Prezi first dropped, and I saw all the things you could do. I was like, wow, you know what it would be cool to do with this? Explaining all the Saw movies to people that hadn't seen them. That was back when there were only 5, I think. So I've been very into the weeds on these franchises. Didn't love Spiral. We got it up there. It's on the shelf. I did like Jigsaw pretty well, more than I think I expected to. But this franchise, we've gone through sequels, we've got midquels, we've got interquels, we've got prequels, and we've got legacy-quels, I guess. I really don't remember much of what happens in Spiral. But I will always show up for these movies in the theater. I wasn't excited for Spiral, but I was still there to see it because I love this franchise, and everybody else seems to want it to die. But every time I hear about a new one, I'm like, yes, Let's go. It's got some similarities. Excuse me. It's got some similarities with Scream, in that the killer is not always the same physical person. In fact, it's usually not. Um, but unlike something like Final Destination or I Know What You Did Last Summer, like there is a name for the killer. Again, like Scream, they call it Ghostface, even though it's different people. They call the killer Jigsaw, regardless of who it is. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Hold on. I even dressed one year as Billy the Puppet for Halloween. I know I had way more hair back then. And for that costume, I even went and tracked down one of those mini cassette tape recorders. And like, these are impossible to find now. Back then, they were pretty difficult. But I found one. And that costume contest was actually part of my pep band in college. We had a costume contest every year. And it was kind of hosted by the director of the pep band, who happened to be my private lesson teacher in college. So I worked out a thing with him where I recorded like a saw type message to him. And while they were presenting all the costumes, they let me get the microphone and I played it so that everyone in the stand got to hear the whole thing. It was super cool. Super cool. So I'm a big fan of this franchise. Oh, goodness me. So, all that said, as much as I love these movies, we're going to cut it open and tear it apart because there's quite a few nitpicks that we can make with this. So, we start opening shot. We get that key floating in the bathtub with Adam. He wakes up, pulls out the plug, key goes down the drain. Big reveal at the end of the movie. That was the key they needed to get out. That's kind of weird, right? Because, A, why put the key in there if it's just going to go down the drain? Now, it's revealed in a later movie that Amanda did that because she wanted Adam to die. And it was supposed to be in his pocket, apparently. But Jigsaw tells Adam at the end of the movie the key to that chain is in that bathtub. So why would he say bathtub if it was supposed to be in his pocket? Also, that seems too easy to just put the key in his pocket. There's nothing to that. Why would it be in his pocket? That doesn't make sense. This is very much a case of the director had this idea, or the writer, director, whatever, had this idea for a cool twist, did not expect this movie to grow into a franchise and put it in, and then tries to retcon it later, right? I can acknowledge that and still appreciate these movies. So there's going to be quite a bit of that in this movie. Lee Winnell, not a great actor. Sorry, guy. You're just... That's a weak point of this franchise. Or of this movie. I can get over it, but I know some people can't. Okay. Why is Jigsaw in the middle? So, first time we saw this movie, we didn't realize that A, that's who that was, and B, he was still alive the whole time. Again, it's just there for the twist at the end, and it doesn't really make sense. I tried looking this up, because as I said, it's been a while since I was really into the weeds on this. The best answer I could find is that they say in the movie that Jigsaw likes to book himself front row seats to his little games. But in every other example that we saw, he's looking through a peephole or something, or watching on a monitor. And we know that he has cameras on them with monitors hooked up to them. So it doesn't seem like it makes logical sense for him to be in there. Now, I've seen other people say that even though he had the camera going and the audio feed, like, for example, at one point, Lawrence turns off the lights so that you can't see what's going on and is whispering to Adam that the audio feedback can't pick up. So it's like he was in there to make sure that things went as they were supposed to, right? And he's the one with the little shocker. But, like, I feel like that's a stretch. So, I don't know why he's in there the whole time. Maybe since it was such an extended one, he didn't want to just watch the camera the whole time, because this one seemed like it took longer than the other ones. I don't know. It's weird, though. Lawrence noticing that the clock is new, I think really does a good job of showing how that character thinks and how he works and his intelligence. Good detail, and that's a good detail for the writers to put in because they could have just, he gets clues later that he needs to know when 6 o'clock is, right? But he picks up on it even before that. And then I just wrote cassette tapes because, man, I can't even find like digital audio recorders in stores anymore. You have to get them online, and I've like asked stores about it because I wanted to get one to like record audio for videos, and they're like, yeah, people just use their phones, so we don't carry them anymore. And I'm like, well, that's not helpful. So yeah, I remember that as this franchise went on, it became kind of more and more of how much suspension of disbelief are we going to give these characters that you can keep getting these recorders and keep getting these cassette tapes. And if I recall correct, again, I don't think I've watched all of them since college. I know I didn't rewatch them for Spiral. I don't think I rewatched them for Jigsaw. So it would have been Saw 7. Yeah. Nope, that's Jigsaw. The final chapter, which I believe was when I was still in college. So it's been a minute, but I'm pretty sure at a certain point they start just using digital recorders and other means of messaging. The premise, the whole setup, it's so simple, and I think that's why I enjoy these movies so much, is that not only the premise in this movie of you're chained up in a bathroom, you gotta escape, which, by the way, I looked into, and I couldn't find any direct link from the Saw movies to the popularity of escape rooms, but I'm like, that's gotta be part of it, right? Like, you cannot tell me, consciously or not, right, intentionally or not, you cannot tell me that there's no way that the invention, the expansion, and the popularity of escape rooms now is not somehow related to the appeal and understanding and knowledge and awareness of this franchise, which focuses on people that have to escape from rooms. I think there's got to be some credit there. And like when the escape room movies came out, which I also have, like there was talk about that. I'm shaking my camera. I'm sorry. There was talk about how like, is this just a weird Saw knockoff or is it its own thing? And it's like, I'll take a Saw knockoff, right? Because we're not getting as many as I'd like, and the newer one kind of disappointed. So I like the escape room movies. I like both of them. And call it Saw Light if you want, but there's something there. There's something there. But then, sorry, separate from the concept of the traps themselves, just this concept of like people going through life not happy, not making good decisions, whining, complaining, saying all this stuff, and it's just like, okay, let's see if you really think that. You put them in this situation, and it it's that near death experience forced upon them that makes them reassess and reevaluate and change how they live. And like, by no means am I saying that Jigsaw is right for doing this stuff, but I think that's an interesting concept to think about, right? And like, I have people in my life that have made decisions that have affected their lives in one way or another, and I use my experience of watching that happen to try and not go down those same roads. But then when I try to like tell other people like, hey, if you do this kind of stuff, it's not going to work out for you, and they just don't get it, and they don't believe it, and they think, oh no, that's not going to happen to me. And it's just like, why are people so resistant to learning lessons from others? Why do so many people, it seems like, they need to make the mistake themselves before they'll believe you? And then they make it, and then they're like, oh my gosh, you were right. And I'm like, I know. So listen to me next time. Not with everything. Certainly I don't know everything, but there are a few things And so especially in college when I was really getting into these movies, because I didn't see the first one when it came out. I think I had started watching them while I was in high school, because the first one came out when I was 14, so I don't think, or 13 even, so I don't think I would have been in there, but I know I hit my peak at in college. I don't exactly remember where I was in there, but certainly in college, there were a lot of friends that I had that were making not great decisions, and I was just like, this isn't going to work out for you, my guy. So yeah, just that idea of, don't waste your life. Don't just complain about how things are. Do something about it. Make it better. We get this weird line that Jigsaw writes to Lawrence about, or it's on the his tape. It's on Lawrence's tape where he says that when there's that much poison in your blood, the only choice left or whatever is to shoot yourself. And I'm just like, that's not an explanation for why that body's there. And like it kind of comes into play later with the cigarette, but we'll talk about the cigarettes when we get there because that's weird too. At this point, I just kind of started writing down cast members because like it's kind of weird how many people that like at the time I would have known from different things, right? Like I would have known Carrie Elwes from Liar Liar, right? And I would have known Danny Glover from Angels in the Outfield, and I would have known, what's her name? Shawnee Smith from Becker, right? And Kin Lung, is that his name, from X-Men 3? And so it's just like this weird combination of people in this movie that like now Carrie Elwes I tend to associate with Saw, and Shawnee Smith I tend to associate with Saw. And it's just weird how that changes over time, isn't it? We get this whole thing about how technically he doesn't kill anyone, and it's just like, that's bogus. That's not gonna hold up. But it's just fun. It's just a fun point of difference between Jigsaw and every other horror villain, right? Michael and Jason and Freddy and even Ghostface and Death in Final Destination, right? And Leatherface and the hook hand guy who still doesn't have a name from I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, all those people, as different as they are, they just track down people and kill them. But Jigsaw, it's just like, nope, he'll track you down, capture you, put you in a situation, and you're probably going to kill yourself. It's not even him doing it. And it's like, legally, obviously, it doesn't hold up. But psychologically, it's just so interesting to me. Am I weird? Why have Gordon listen to Amanda? So, I never realized how non-linear this movie was, but I was trying to look something up on Wikipedia, and I happened to see that they called it a non-linear story. And I'm like, oh yeah, it is. And I do think that really helps the pacing, but it's kind of hard to remember when things happen where in the actual narrative because it jumps around so much. But when the detectives take Gordon into the station and his alibi checks out, right? So he's getting ready to leave, and they're like, why don't you just listen to this listen to this woman talk about this horrible experience she went through? And it's like, why? Right? Why have him listen to her? He's not involved. His alibi checked out. You've got nothing else to show that he's involved. Even if you think he's the killer, why do you think that a victim talking about her experience is going to do anything, right? I can almost kind of get it as like a, hey, this is a big deal. This really affects people, but like, it's not like your average Joe is going to be able to do anything about it. It's not something like speeding or texting while driving or driving drunk or driving high or something like that, where PSAs where people share their stories can directly affect the decisions that other people make. This is not like that. So what is the average Joe supposed to do with that story? It's very strange, and it's only there for the audience to get Amanda's story. And if you haven't seen the short film is basically Amanda's scene, except for it's Lee Winnell in it. Lee Winnell, who plays Adam in this movie, but he's playing a character I think called David in that movie. So it's like, it's not connected. Some people have tried to like force it into the canon, and like, you don't need to, because that scene comes back again. It's like, does Adam secretly have a twin? But yeah, maybe just check that out if you're not sure about the whole movie. Just look it up. It's on YouTube. But that scene is just there for us to see the reverse bear trap, right? Which becomes one of the most famous devices. I got like a hangnail. It's bugging me. Sorry. One of the most famous devices in the whole franchise. But like, we don't need the framing of Gordon being there. We can just have a scene when he's talking about, you know, he knows about the killer, right? So we see these other two people that have died, right? There's no framing device for that other than Gordon just telling the story. We can just have him say, there's one woman that survived, and then we can just see her scene and see her giving her statement to the police, and it doesn't have to be involved with them. It's weird. It's just a weird thing. The world's smallest knife. So Jigsaw in Amanda's trap gives her this teeny tiny little knife to cut open Adam, and I'm just like, if you're trying to get her in that headspace to do that, give her a bigger knife. What are you doing? I've always thought that was funny, that she has just this teeny tiny little pocket knife. I also wrote, why is Amanda not in prison? And like, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know a lot about the law, but it's like, it seems pretty obvious that like the Jigsaw's whole thing of I don't kill people, it's like, no, that's still a type of murder, even though you're not doing it directly. But like, Amanda killed a guy, right? And like, she was under duress. She was told to do it to save her own life. I wouldn't say she was forced to do it. She made the decision to do it. She thought when she made the decision that he was already dead because Jigsaw lied to her, which we're going to get to. But by the time she actually started cutting in, she knew that he was still alive, so she knowingly killed this man. Legal. Do something on the Saw movies. Because how would the legal system treat that? If there's someone who was in, even if it wasn't truly a life or death situation, in what they believe was a life or death situation, where in order to save their own life, they had to take the life of an innocent person, not self-defense, not anything like that, kill an innocent person to save their own life. What's the legal status of that? How does that work? Because she's not in jail. It's not like she's in their custody or anything, because she's actively helping. We find out she's actively helping Jigsaw in later movies. So, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. It's weird. What did I say we were going to get back to? Jigsaw lying to her. So I think we're going to get back to it with the cigarette scene. But it's just like, it's weird. Because Jigsaw says in that video, like, look around, know that I'm not lying. And it's like, why even put that in? Because you are lying. Right? And then with the cigarettes, he says, the cigarettes are harmless, but he implies that he wants him to poison Adam. So it's like, then why even put that the cigarettes are harmless? It's just weird when Jigsaw decides to tell the truth and when he decides to lie and why he decides to lie. And like, the lying doesn't play into his plan of wanting to rehabilitate people, right? Because it shouldn't, if the person's already dead, that shouldn't be a hard decision, right? To cut into them to save their own life. It's gross, it's weird, but like, if they're already dead, that's not really a decision many people would struggle with, I don't think. I don't know. But like, you want her to face this choice, right? You want her to have to take this huge step. So why tell her that he's dead? It's very strange. And this is what gets into, and it kind of changes from movie to movie, and certainly from different Jigsaw characters to different Jigsaw characters, but it's like, he's not as, he's more sadistic than he claims, right? Because he claims like, oh, I hate killing, right? I want all my victims to survive. I want them to learn a lesson. I want them to have a better life, right? I'm doing this for good reasons. But it's like, you're not, though. You enjoy this. You're getting some weird kind of sick pleasure out of this. And you're not admitting that. You're not accepting that. Which, like, maybe someone should put you in a trap. Great transitions. this is again something that's in some of the other movies, but I think they kind of dropped it later on. But they're just really neat. I'm sorry, really neat scene transitions in this movie. Really interesting camera shots, like the shot of the mirror in the parking garage where we see the person in the pig costume getting out. Like it's visually interesting to look at, even when nothing exciting is happening. But then when you combine that with the transitions and with the pacing of going back and forth all around this frame story of the bathroom scene, it's very interesting. I've seen this movie at least a dozen times, and I still, for the most part, didn't even think about getting on my phone. There was something I wanted to look up, right? Why he's in the room. So I was on my phone for that. But I was never on my phone out of boredom. I was always on my phone, or I was only on my phone to look up information about the movie. So, like, you'd think I'd be bored of this by now. Absolutely not. I'm still very much drawn in by it. Then after Lawrence has told Adam all of this, Adam gets upset. And he's like, we're not in the same situation. You have something I don't. Information. And it's just like, he just told you all that information. He just gave you all the knowledge that he has. And now you're in the same situation again. What are you upset about? It's very strange. Adam acts very strange in this. Least convincing scared kid ever. So the kid that plays his daughter, whose name is Diana. The kid's name is Diana. The daughter's name is Diana, not the actor's name. She has this scene where she thinks someone's in her room. She sits up in her bed, stares at where she thinks the person is, and her face is just blank. No fear, no concern, no curiosity, blank. Then she slowly gets up out of bed, slowly walks down the hall to her parents' room, just stands in their room until her mom wakes up. She's not waking her mom up, and she's like, Mommy, there's a man in my room. Mommy, there's a man in my closet. Whatever, right? And Mom's like, go back to bed. It's like, he talked to me. And it's like, what direction was this kid given? Because there's no emotion there at all. Later on, after Zepp has kidnapped them, and they're gagged and they're crying, like, then she does a pretty good job. She seems like she's a scared kid. She's crying. She's delivering her lines in a convincing way. I don't know what was going on in this scene. Very, very strange. That's another thing that, like, I've always thought it was weird. Of, like, why is this kid just, like, totally chill with this situation that's going on? Lawrence tells her as he's consoling her, there's no such thing as the bad man. I think this is the first time I've watched this movie with subtitles. And this is why I watch a movie with subtitles now, because there's things that I've never heard watching this that I saw in the subtitles. We'll get to that later. And then there are things like this where I've always misheard or just like thought he said something else. I would have thought that he would have said there's no such thing as the boogeyman, or there's no such thing as something else more directly related to her situation. But he says there's no such thing as the bad man. Yes, there is, my guy. There are absolutely bad men. What are you doing? What are you doing? Don't tell your daughter there's no such thing as a bad man. That's horrible. Oh my gosh. And then I just wrote that Lawrence is pretty casual about leaving his daughter to go cheat on his wife right after his daughter calls him out on his BS. And then his wife calls him out on his BS. And I know he would retort with, I did not cheat on her. It's like, that's what he's going to do. And he's like clearly concerned about being secretive, because then he demeans this secretary girl, whatever, for paging him while he's at home. He's like, we gotta be safe, we gotta be smart, blah, blah. And it's just like, dude, you're not doing that, because your wife knows that something's up, right? I assume she just figured it out. The daughter, I'm assuming Zepp just told her, right? Because she said the man talked to her. So I'm assuming Zepp said something like, your daddy's gonna leave you, or something, and that's why she asked about it. But it's just like, literally both your wife and your daughter are suspicious of you and or angry at you, and you're still gonna, like, just don't do it. Even if you still leave because you claim it's for work, don't go meet up with that girl. I'm like, yeah, you didn't end up doing stuff with her, but like, still, bro, come on. You're supposed to be smart. You noticed that clock was new. Notice what's going on around you. Then I put, man, Zepp is just standing there in a sheet, and like this has always been such a silly shot to me, because Zepp is in the closet, his eye is exposed, right? Everything else is in darkness, but presumably his face is uncovered because we can see his eye. And then he comes out. Diana screams. Allison hears it. Allison runs to the room, opens the door, and he's just standing there in a sheet. And Diana is just sitting on her bed. And there's like a second where the camera just lingers on them, and both of them are just sitting there, standing or sitting there, motionless, not moving. And then Zepp moves and grabs her. And it's so odd and it's so weird, because that implies that he came out of the closet, then put the sheet on, right? Because we could see his face, and then he's covered in a sheet. So he puts the sheet on as or after he comes out of the closet, gets right up to the bed, and then stops and freezes. And the daughter this whole time does not get off of the bed or try to run away or try to hide, but just sits there as he comes towards it. Which, like, yeah, she's a kid. Maybe she's too afraid to think of what to do. But then the mom busts in, and the kid still doesn't move. And Zepp just freezes, and it's like, maybe if I don't move, she won't see me. And waits a second, and then goes, and it's so weird. And it's so funny, but in not an intentional way. Oh, oh my goodness. Then we get Detective Stapp and Singh figuring out a possible location. And Singh says, do you think we have enough for a warrant? And Tapp says, who said anything about a warrant? You're a terrible cop. Because if you're going there to arrest him, you know that's not going to work out because you don't have a warrant, right? So that's not going to work out. Which implies that you're going there to kill him. And, like, not going to say that I don't understand where you're coming from, but that makes you a bad cop. If your plan is to go murder somebody instead of arresting them and having them go through the judicial system. Then they're in there. They find this other guy who's strapped to this death trap. And instead of freeing him, he's like, let's see what he's going to do. Because, again, he says, we don't know what he looks like, right? We don't want to shoot this guy. We don't know what he looks like. We don't know if this is the real guy. Maybe you should have gotten a warrant, huh? How about that? And I believe this guy does survive, right? Because Singh shoots the drills to stop it. So he survives that, but then Singh dies there. Tapp escapes. So presumably Tapp told the rest of the police to go get him? I don't know. I think it's revealed in a later movie what happened to that guy, but I forget what it was. Okay, then we get the cigarette. And then the little note that Jigsaw writes to Lawrence. He says, smoking is only poisonous when it ends in bloodshed. First of all, no. Smoking is always poisonous. Nicotine is poison. Second of all, smoking does not often end in bloodshed. So that's a weird thing to say. Right? Because even when you die of smoking, you die of cancer or whatever, usually people don't associate that with bloodshed, right? Unless I'm missing something there. So this is two wrong sentences in one. But also, this is somehow supposed to imply to Lawrence that he's supposed to poison this cigarette and get Adam to smoke it. But there's no gun for Adam to shoot himself to also bleed, like the guy in the middle presumably did. So there's still no bloodshed there, even when you add on extra poison to the nicotine. So this sentence is wrong 3 ways. It makes no sense. Moving on. This is where he says the cigarettes are harmless. But why? He puts 2 in there, right? And so Lawrence tries to make them think that he's poisoned one and gives it to Adam, but really he poisons one and gives the other one to Adam. But like, if that's your plan, just say that, hey, one of these is poison and one of these isn't, right? And why are there two in anyway, right? Why would there be two? Jigsaw would know at this point that Adam smokes and Lawrence doesn't. So what's the point of having two where he can possibly trick you? Is it because you want to see if he's going to try to trick you and you're going to use that to judge him? It's odd. Then I wrote worst acting ever. And we'll get to it again later, but like Lee Winnell's character, Adam, acting like he's dying. I do think that was like intentionally bad. So we'll give him a pass on that one. But also, Lawrence has devised this plan. He turns off the lights. So whoever's watching this feed is going to know that something's up, right? Whispers the plan to Adam. And then immediately after turning the lights back on, it's like, so, you still want... And he's like looking at the camera. He's like, you still want that cigarette? And Adam, who previously was like, give me that cigarette. Come on, please, give it. He's just like, yeah. Sure. And it's just like, how could you think anybody's gonna believe you when you guys are both the characters are bad actors? And it's like, at least like tell Adam like, hey, in like 5 or 10 minutes, like ask me for that cigarette again, and then this is what we're gonna do. But when you do it right away after you turn the lights back on, no go. Obviously Jigsaw didn't believe them, right? But it's just like, why would they think that? Then we get this scene with the camera flash. After Adam gets electrocuted, he remembers how he got captured. And man, that scene was like the only part of these movies that actually scared me. Was going through in the dark, hitting the camera flash, and you don't know what's going to be there. And the suspense was still there. I was ready for it. I'm prepared for it by now after seeing this over a dozen times. But that suspense is still there. I love that scene. Great scene. Okay. Why? I'm sorry. Was Allison prompted to reveal to Lawrence about Adam? So I couldn't remember at this point. As much as I've known and learned about these movies, I've forgotten a lot of it. I couldn't remember. I thought that Adam was hired by Allison because she knew that Lawrence was doing something, but no, he was hired by Jigsaw. So in the moment, I was like, is Allison just telling Lawrence that Adam knows what's going on because she's confessing, or is she being prompted to do this by Zepp? And it must have been the latter, right? Because she wouldn't know about Adam because she didn't hire him. But why reveal it in that way, right? Why have Lawrence learn that Adam is keeping something from him via a phone call from his wife instead of putting that on his tape or putting that in a letter or putting it in that box with the cigarettes? It's odd. It's just odd. And it feels weird, and it's weird that she delivers the line the way that she does. Very strange. Adam must be a very sneaky photographer. So then we get these flashbacks of Adam taking pictures of Lawrence, and there's a lot of pictures where he's looking right towards the camera, and there's a lot of scenes where we see Adam like peeking around a corner taking pictures as Lawrence like turns because he hears the shutter clicks, and I'm just like, what is Adam wearing, like a bed sheet or something, and thinks that Lawrence can't see him? It's very strangely shot, and it kind of just takes me out of the movie a little bit. And then I put, why does Jigsaw want Lawrence to kill Adam? And this is where, like, I do think that other movies, even though they focus more on the traps and the gore, I do think they have fewer plot holes because they're planning out the world building. But, like, we are told at the beginning of the movie that Lawrence's goal is to kill Adam. We are never told why. Right? And we're never told why Jigsaw wants Adam to die. Right? And then presumably, Adam's goal is to escape. I can't remember if that's what Jigsaw says on the tape or not, but it's like they gave him the key, even though I've already talked about how and why that doesn't make any sense. But also, the saws were both on Adam's side. And Adam chose to throw one to Lawrence, which is the only way that Lawrence escaped. So what's Adam supposed to be? What's Adam's goal? And why does Jigsaw want Adam to die? Because most of the time he gives his people a way to survive, right? And a reason, and more so later on than in the first one, but the traps are usually thematically relevant to what Jigsaw's view of this person is, right? What their sin is in his mind. But Adam, it's just like, no, you're just there, and if you don't escape, he's gonna kill you, and it's very weird. And then at the end of the movie, he leaves Adam in there, and we find out again in future movies that he still is leaving Adam the option to escape, but then Amanda goes in and murders him. So I'm very, very confused on what Jigsaw's plan for Adam was, and why he told Lawrence that he wanted him to kill Adam. I'm lost. I might have to rewatch all the sequels, which I would greatly enjoy. Okay, then we get Whiny Carrie, and this is really where the criticism comes in, and like the parodies that I want to say they've been in like scary movies or something. Because like Carrie Elwes, I Love You Guy, Robin Hood Men in Tights, one of my favorite movies. Princess Bride, one of my favorite movies. Saw, my favorite horror franchises. I love Carrie Elwes. Don't know how to say his name, but man, his acting just goes off the rails in these final scenes. And it's just not great. And other people have talked about it. I don't need to dwell on it. We all know what's going on there. Back on Adam. How does sawing off his foot factor into his plan? Like, obviously, that's what he would need to do to escape. But, like, I don't know. Because Jigsaw tells him in the beginning that, like, you always watch other people's lives. You're not living your own life. And it's just like, how is cutting off his foot going to help him live his own life? I don't know. Like I said, in this movie, the traps don't seem to be tied to what the character has or has not done. I think that happens more in later movies. So maybe that's not a John Kramer thing. Maybe that's a different Jigsaw's whole deal. Then we get Lawrence is trying to reach the phone because Allison is trying to call him, and she never gets through. And it's like, if he had gotten that phone, and if she had gotten through, and if he learned that, hey, they're both safe, would he still have cut off his foot? Probably not, right? Because that's what he's freaking out about, is he doesn't know what's happened to them. Literally, the first thing that they try to get that they can't reach, way earlier in the movie, he tells Adam to use your shirt. So Adam takes off his shirt and gets the tape recorder. And here, Lawrence is still wearing his dress shirt over his regular shirt. Just use your shirt, bro. The phone's not that far away. Come on, man. What happened? What are you doing? I get he's under duress at the moment, but like Adam could have figured it out, right? Been like, hey, use your shirt. Come on now. What are you doing? Then we get Adam's family. Now this is the thing that the Adams family, not the Adams family, Adam's family. I've never heard this line before, but I saw it in the subtitles and I rewound it, and it's just like barely there. It's as Lawrence is like screaming and cutting his foot off, so it's like very much not the highlight of what's going on. But Adam says something along the lines of like, hey man, I've got a family too. I don't see them very much. I want to change that. And it's just like this extra piece of Adam's backstory that I've never noticed before. And it's like, clearly he now wants to make a change after the situation, and then, he's not going to be able to do that, we find out later. And this is why I advocate for watching with subtitles, because sometimes there are just things that you don't hear. Okay. What does this say? Oh, not that much going in the first one. I already talked about that. Then I wrote, what if Zepp died? So Zepp gets a couple lucky breaks, right? Because first, Allison gets the upper hand on him. She escapes with Diana. he's supposed to kill them, right? Because Lawrence didn't kill Adam in time, so he's supposed to kill them. He lets them go because apparently it's more important to go kill Lawrence. Even though I feel like if you would have just shocked him enough, he would have died. I don't know why Zepp has to go physically be there. But he goes, so they escape, so he's failed once. But now Tap is following him, and Tap attacks him. And he somehow gets the upper hand over Tap and kills Tap. And then he goes in and opens the door. Right? And then Adam kills Zepp. And then Adam is left there while Lawrence leaves. And then John Kramer gets up and he leaves Adam there and he shuts the door again. I can't remember from the later ones if the door is locked. So if Zepp had died, either from Allison killing him or Tap killing him, the only thing that wouldn't have happened is that he wouldn't have opened the door. So would Lawrence have been able to open the door himself? I don't know. So I guess it doesn't really matter if Zepp died earlier or not, because he never does the thing he's supposed to do, which is kill Lawrence. But then it turns out in future movies that's not a big deal because, spoiler alert, so maybe just Adam would have not revealed that he was still alive because he wanted Lawrence to think that he was dead. Although there were no more bullets. So it's not like, I don't know, I guess if Lawrence is able to move around at that point, maybe he can find something else to kill Adam with. But Adam could have just waited until Lawrence left. I don't know. My point when I wrote this down was like, almost like a Joker in Dark Knight situation where like how many things had to go right for the plan to work and how many contingencies did Jigsaw have in case something went wrong. But it seems like it wouldn't have mattered if Zepp got there or not, if he died or not. Things would have played out more or less the same way anyway. So I guess that's good for John Kramer. And my last note says, is Adam just supposed to slowly die? But then I had remembered that we find out what happens to him in a later movie. So that note is irrelevant. I love this movie. I love the franchise. I don't love every movie in the franchise, but I love the franchise as a whole. I should look up and see if there's some strange fan theory connecting Escape Room to these movies, because the Escape Room movies I enjoy more than the newest Saw movie, and if they don't go back to how the old Saw movies were, I'm going to be less excited for future installments. So maybe there's some kind of hidden fan connection that I can grab onto. Although I don't know if the Escape Room movies are going to keep going or not. I know they're pretty cheap, and they did fairly well, so that's a story for a different day. I've done videos on the Escape Room movies, if you want to check those out too. That's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Have you seen these? Do you like them? Is the gore too much? Do you like the gore? Right? Because the gore's not too much for me, other than the one, I think it's in 5, where the guy, the room is squishing and a bone busts out of his arm. That's like one of the few things. And then like when they break their foot to get out of the there's a couple that the gore is too much for me. But even when it's not too much for me, I don't enjoy that. That's not why I watch these. I tolerate it because of the psychology. But do you like the gore? Or do you like the psychology? Or do you not like them at all? Tell me what you think of the Saw movies. But that's all that I've got. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. Don't cheat on your wife.